All right, so you're at Northwestern. Things are pretty crazy, 69, 70, tumultuous time. So what was your undergrad in at Northwestern?
I went there actually to major in physics, but I majored in elementary education.
Okay,
I wanted to be a teacher,
yep.
so
And
that's what I did.
did you come out then and teach for a little while?
I sure did. I taught in Highland Park, Illinois. And what's very interesting is that 1 year, my first year teaching was, my students must have loved it because 40 years later, I'm sitting at work and I get a call from one of the students in that class, and they said, "Mr. Manos, we've been looking all over for you." And I don't know how I showed up for them, but and then we talked about the other kids that were in that third grade class. It was wonderful, but it was so lonely because I was accustomed to being in Bay where I could walk to my friend's house. I could go see Ned Chapman or Chris Piper. I didn't need a car, and we would end up doing something that was interesting. I still do not have any friends from Northwestern that I'm in contact with.
Wow, wow.
And I wrestled on the wrestling team there, and even then, I didn't have any lasting friendships.
That's crazy.
All my friendships are from Bay.
So you mentioned a couple of your friends who we were talking to off camera before, the creek story. It's because a lot of us grew up on the west side of Bay, and we remember the creek behind Westerly.
Oh,
So
yeah.
why don't you tell?
Oh, yeah. Well, so Ned Chapman and Kent Wadsworth. Kent lived right behind me, one house down. And so we used to do things all the time, Ned and Kent and I. And it was spring of our senior year. And when the weather's all warming up and the snow's melting, and we went down to the creek and saw the creek was up like 4 feet. The gap underneath the bridge down by his house was about this much. And so we found an old cement tub and tied inner tubes on it to keep it afloat. And we jumped in that cement tub and took it all the way to the lake. We had only one mishap, and there was a tree that had fallen over the creek, and it tipped us in. But when you're 17 years old, who cares?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So you start right behind Westerly and get all the way to the lake
All the
because
way
the
to the
water
lake.
was rushing so
And
hard.
then, of course, we didn't figure out how we were going to get back home. So we had to call everybody and see who could come and get us.
Oh, that's funny. Well, even in Bay, you still didn't have that far to walk. But
Yeah.
so you grew up part of your life on Russell, was it?
No, Bruce Road.
Bruce,
Bruce Road.
by the police station.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you guys moved to Drake.
Then we moved to Drake when I was in 7th grade, yes.
Yeah. And did you wrestle even back when you were that age, the 7th, 8th
Yeah, I
grade?
wish I had. I didn't even know that wrestling existed. I tried out for the basketball team in 9th grade and didn't make it, so I figured, okay, well, basketball's not it. So my friends were going out for wrestling, so I did too. Fell in love with that sport. I still love that sport. And my brother and I go and watch the NCAAs and whatever world championships we can see. It's something that gets in your blood.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
Keith became a wrestler then too, right?
yes, he
Yeah.
did. Yes, he did.
Yeah. That's
And he ended up being a very good coach out of Richmond Heights as well.
great.